everyone on Facebook. I'm Mary Beth Marsden, and welcome to GBMC's Greater Living. And today we're talking about a topic that is really timely and important to just about anyone who has seen a doctor. And it has to do with your privacy, your health care, your records, technology, all of that kind of stuff. And the experts are with us, so have no fear. Your questions will be answered. Joining us now, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Harold Tucker. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And also Cindy Ellis, who was in charge of really turning all of GBMC's records into an online database that is hopefully easily accessible to people who go to GBMC and see doctors there on all levels.
Right.
So thanks for being here and talking about it.
Our pleasure.
So let's just give people a little bit of history in case maybe they haven't come in contact with the My Chart aspect of the record keeping now at GBMC, and they're curious to know what it looks like now and what's happened to their health records and what will become of them.
All right.
So dive right in.
I'll take that part of it. So yes, I think it's something that everybody really wants to know about. I think from a GBMC perspective, we want you to know about it. So about a year ago now, GBMC made a huge investment and a very big undertaking to replace 3 of our legacy systems for electronic health documentation. So we went from 3 systems down to 1, and from that we have a whole bunch of different aspects that we can use to engage patients, have you connect and really partner with us and be able to see your records and information that you want instead of having to wait weeks on end.
Okay, so while we're talking, before we talk with you, I just want to let you know that you can ask anything you want right now. If you're on Facebook and you're watching us live and you have questions about your records, if you have privacy concerns, which is very topical and in the news right now, please go ahead and fire off those questions and we will try and get to them in the next half hour or so. And we have a whole bunch here too that we're going to address. And even after the fact, you can still write in on Facebook, and the great folks at GBMC will make every effort to get back to you. So Dr. Tucker, I can't even imagine, you had to obviously present this to your staff and what this was like. It must have been a big sort of almost a campaign to let them know what was happening. And I don't want to spend too much time on history, right. But just kind of give us a sense of what how big this was.
So just to elaborate a little bit more on what Cindy said, if we went back a little bit more than a year ago, we had several different systems. The hospital developed an electronic medical record for the hospitalized patients. The employed physicians from GBMC had a different electronic record, and then independent physicians and private physicians either used still paper charts or they had their own office-based. And so there were many different ways a medical record could be maintained, and yet they didn't talk to each other very easily, and one didn't have good communication. So we made the decision to bring all those systems in. So the employed physicians, of which I'm also the lead, the hospital-based, and our geriatric hospice program, Gilchrist, all were tied into one system called EPIC, and that allows us to integrate the patient's record, one patient, one record completely, outpatient, inpatient, emergency room, post-acute care, all of that's tied in. So we had to talk to all our providers, teach all our nurses, teach all the physicians how to use this particular record, build a system according to the GBMC standards, and then work that through. And so that's what we did.
It's been a year, almost online for a year now, right?
Yep.
When you look back over this last year, what is the reaction that you get from people on staff? And would you say this has been completely life-changing for
So the beginning of it was very difficult. So many physicians found that there was a lot more that you had to do, a lot more time to take to document a record. You were a bit distracted when you were seeing patients. So there was a learning curve to get good at doing it. And we would continuously have, and through Cindy's efforts and her team's efforts, to teach us, train us, the nurses, everybody, because everybody was using it, finance, everywhere. And so there was a learning curve to do that, and we're getting better and better and becoming much more efficient. People learned how to use certain what we call smart phrases and smart text to make it a little bit easier to document, and that's been pretty good. So within the year, we have completely revolutionized how we do it. In fact, we are the only system, and Cindy was the lead on this, to win an award for that. We did it so rapidly, the HIMSS 7 award, to show that we are totally paperless throughout the system, ambulatory to the inpatient side and the hospice side as well. And it just showed it was a remarkable transformation for us to make that. And now I think people are very used to it. They find it very easy to use, much easier. Certainly the inpatient side is very easy. Good documentation, easy to find, good for patients as well.
You need to spread the word, because I can think of 3 probably places that could use your expertise. It's really hard to do all
She's
of that.
not
So
for sale. So there you go.
And to what Hal has said, we've also replaced the entire revenue cycle of the project as well. So it was the clinicals, and then also how the patients are able to pay their bills and how the hospital's able to obtain the revenue from it. So it was a complete rip and replace. And I think to have now come from October of last year to October of this year, the adoption rate and how quickly people really have picked it up, we have not stopped since we went live. We've continually added new content to the system and optimized it based off of everybody's feedback. So I think we went through a couple of bulletproof vests there for a while, and we've lived to now tell the tale of it and continue to do so.
Of course, it's easy for you to get the doctor feedback, but sometimes it's harder to get the patient or the client feedback. And
Absolutely.
that's paramount to
It
a good system. And so we have a lot of questions, and let's just dive right into some of them.
Sure.
Because people really, they're very concerned about it. I mean, they really want to, guard the privacy of their healthcare records for many, many reasons. And they also are intimidated when they hear about new technology, a new way of finding out what those records are. So here's the first question, which is from June. And June writes, while I love the concept of being able to view our medical records online, in actuality, I'm having a problem because each of our medical providers seems to use a different platform. None of these platforms seem to be able to go to communicate with each other. So in order to get the complete medical picture for our family, we must access not only GBMC's platform, but also MedStar, Quest, Chesapeake Urology, LifeBridge, etc., maybe more. Each system has a different password and a different way of displaying data. I find this to be overwhelming. I'm already overwhelmed reading this question. Can you offer any suggestions?
All right, June, let's see if I can try to summarize this in not too techy of a fashion. So basically, there's ways that we are working on what's called health information exchange. There's a number of different ways that we can do it, from Epic to Epic hospitals seamlessly. It's great. We can be able to pull in your records from those locations, be able to access it. It becomes more of a conversation with you to then consume it as a part of our record. Of course, every organization has their own process. It's their own encounters with you, so that needs to be maintained as that separate instance. But commonalities such as medications, problems that you've experienced, allergies, that type of thing is great to share across different entities. We also have ways that we are working, and this is #1 priority for a number of the electronic health records these days, is to really standardize the information that we're sharing across the different locations. But also it'll help us to connect better. So there's different ways between CRISP and Care Quality, ways that are non-Epic EHRs that we're able to access that same type of information, pull it in after review with you, and consume it. So that way you'll get more of a robust, comprehensive view of your record when you do access it through our GBMC MyChart. One thing to know is there are ways that we can help you to see your other MyChart instances if you do seek your care outside of GBMC, so that when you do log into those MyChart accounts, you'll easily see them all displayed together and then be able to access the one that you want. Often, a lot of the information that is more from your labs or your specialist, sometimes that information will already exist into your GBMC record because of how the results come back in. And that's one beautiful thing about your MyChart account, is now you have the ability to not have to call those labs where you had your blood drawn or other specimens obtained. You can actually just log in and take a look at those results in your MyChart account.
So if I go to get blood drawn, let's say, and I go to, I'm going to say Quest Diagnostics.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And are they going to know to include the records from that blood draw? We usually send them to a doctor. How's it going to get to the MyChart?
So that's a beautiful way that electronic health records we actually have leveraged. So your provider will place the order for you to have your blood obtained. You'll go to whichever lab you prefer. It could be based off of your insurance, have your blood drawn at that facility, and then your results will come back to the provider electronically. The provider will review it, but the results will also release to your MyChart account. So if your provider hasn't had a chance to give you a phone call, you're no longer waiting days on end to get the results, you're able to log into your MyChart account, see the results, and often if there's a conversation that needs to occur, your provider could even send you a message to say, hey, here are your results, here are what my concerns are. I'd really like for you to come back in so that we can schedule an appointment to talk about that.
And this would apply to radiology as well, so advanced radiology, same sort of process. We place an order, electronically goes, so the patient doesn't have to carry that paper slip, forget to bring it the day of the radiology test, or the lab test. It's already in the computer when they registered for the x-ray or the lab test. Now, Epic.
Are there people then who have MyChart accounts and don't realize it at this point?
No, they have to sign up for it.
Oh, they have to sign up. So
absolutely.
So you could be a patient that hasn't signed up for MyChart, GBMC,
right.
particularly if you've been an inpatient. We offer that to them then to sign up even before they get discharged or once you come to the office. And then you can sign up. You have to be activated the account. Some do, and we're trying to encourage it more and more because we think it's so much better to partner with the patient and include them in their care by having them know more and more information.
But somehow their records are being kept digitally at this point, even if they have a MyChart account
totally,
or don't.
totally.
Right? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, Brendan wrote in, I know the patient portal site, which is MyChart, right?
Yep.
Correct.
So we'll be using MyChart a lot, and that's what that is if you're not familiar with it. This is the patient portal site. Has an option to email my provider. Will the physician's office actually respond to my question via email, or should I still call the office?
Right. So, no, don't call the office because everybody is frustrated when how to get into the office phone.
The phone has become
phones
so
are such a problem. It's
so
a
hard.
bane of everybody's existence getting into.
But it's all my
doctor's
mother will use.
I know. So what we're trying to do is encourage people to use MyChart because yes, when you MyChart your team, the provider team, several different people may respond to that depending on what the kind of question it is. But if it's specifically to your physician or provider, they will respond. There is a time lag sometimes, and you have to have proper expectations. I think it says on MyChart it'll be responded to within 48 hours. But some things that are urgent obviously will get everybody's attention to respond. But yes, that is the way we want to communicate. We think that's a preferred way, and it's easy then to communicate back to the patient and answer any questions. If there are medication refills that are requested, that's an automatic thing that can be done as well. A request about explain this lab test versus that lab test, that can be done all through that MyChart.
When you go to GBMC now and you go to the various offices, let's say you're just having a checkup with one of the physicians, are there now, is there a big promotional campaign about MyChart? Is there a written pamphlet on how to sign up?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you can find the information just by being there, and it's all around the hospital.
So as the patient comes into a doctor's office, they're frequently asked, do you have MyChart? Are you active? And we constantly get those kind of requests, and in fact encourage, as patients are seen both in the hospital, in the emergency room, or in the physician offices, to sign up for MyChart. So it's a big promotion.
And one of the beautiful things about it too is that you don't have to sit on a phone Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday during specific times to be able to do it. If you're in the middle of, getting your kids, running them around to sports or activities, and you finally sit down at 9 o'clock at night and you have a chance to yourself, that's when you can actually log in, you can post the question, and get an answer, without having to sit and wait a long time. So it's a lot more.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to
And
it.
doctors are, they get the messages constantly. They're always on their computer, so they can do the response anytime as well. So they may be at midnight that
They're walking around with
responding
iPads or whatever, tablets,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Okay, this question was bound to come, and I'm glad it did. And I'm sure a lot of people watching have the same thing. A lot of concerns about privacy and data breaches and hacks and theft of personal information. So Steve wrote, I have heard a lot of companies have data breaches lately. There's a big one happening right now. How do I know that my health and personal information is safe?
Right. So Steve, that's a really good question. Honestly, to be completely transparent with you, yes, I think it's always a risk that we face every single day. The minute you do anything that's automated, you touch your phone, you log into the computer, you check your bank account, all of that creates a carbon footprint. So I think that, yes, the reality is real, that it is definitely healthcare has been targeted before in the past. But from an organizational standpoint, we see these same healthcare providers, and we're as vulnerable as our patients are. So we take that extremely seriously, and we've put a number of things in place where we can do proactive monitoring for any type of suspicious behavior, activity, things that happen that you would never even know from behind the techie walls, if you will. So I think that Yes, there is always that risk. There are ways to opt out of sharing that information, so we do provide that as for those
Can
that
you pick
don't
and
want to
choose
share.
what information you want to put in MyChart? I mean, so for example, obviously with a bank breach or a consumer breach, there's a chance of having your Social Security number compromised or a credit card number compromised, but your information is sort of personal health history information, which people are concerned about when it comes to insurance and so forth.
It's one reason why we make you sign up in person. That way we are validating that you are who you say you are. There are a number of different required elements to set up your username as well as your password, so that is also a different layer of protection. And there are certain things that are not shared through MyChart that just does not provide value to what information the patient needs. So there are definitely limitations with respect to Social Security numbers, things of that nature as to what's shared.
We didn't get a question, but just so you know, we got a comment. Melissa just wrote in on Facebook, I love MyChart.
Melissa.
I know. I love you, Melissa. I get all the details that I need, and it's all right there for me. And I think that is your point, that the benefits of this, for most people, the majority of people, outweighs what the threat may be. And nothing is foolproof when it comes to being online.
Absolutely.
So the other aspect about security, one, there are notes that we don't release to MyChart that we consider sensitive notes. So there are aspects that we say, shouldn't be open, revealed that physicians may have written. But also we protect against, because many employees at GBMC may recognize their neighbors and their other family members that they're not supposed to have access to those records. So we have a very active system of auditing that. We have everybody sign who works at GBMC, a compliance regulation that you won't be looking at records that don't belong, that you have no business doing that, that's not your purview. And we monitor that and audit that and report that if that's an inappropriate usage. So we try and protect people's privacy even from their friends or neighbors.
Which brings up a question that I have. Can you say to your physician, please don't put that in your notes, or please don't put that on MyChart? Can you have a say in what information is entered and what isn't?
Definitely. The provider has the ability to mark a note as sensitive that will not make it shareable through MyChart. So it's something that if it's disclosed as a part of the conversation that is important for the overall health and well-being of that patient, then that would not be restricted from the note. But definitely sharing of those types of notes can be a conversation, and the provider can take the action to restrict it.
Some parts of that history are negotiated with the physician. So if you want to reveal something that's personal, that's not relevant to your medical care, that can easily be said, I don't want that in the medical record. If it's relevant to your medical care, then it may impact other physicians seeing you or something like that, then that's something that should be discussed.
But I guess it's just sort of like you can have the conversation. People are concerned about a sense of loss of control, I think. And so it gives them sort of that ability. You talked about the doctors, and the nurses and everyone on staff really constantly being at their computers and entering information and responding to emails. So we got another just a relevant question now live. So if you're watching now live, please fire in those questions. We'll take them. Do you get concerned about less interaction? And this has been an ongoing conversation, I think, with patients, because physicians and nurses are entering records into a computer.
Yeah, so this is a big issue and was one of the drawbacks of moving to the electronic medical record, particularly in the beginning. That transition from where we were to where we are going is a difficult transition. As physicians and nurses were first learning how to document, and we're spending a lot of time on the screen. And we're trying, obviously, to monitor that, get away from that, and position the computer in the right way, but also work with physicians and nurses to be much more efficient and learn how to document more easily, quickly, so that they are really getting the information back from the patient.
I think, too, as a society, we're getting a little more used to seeing people sort of multitasking in that way.
So that's exactly what I'm going to capitalize on right now. So because more and more people are using their devices, and you see this as much as we try to say, don't do this.
Right, but it's becoming so commonplace.
Exactly. So we're leveraging them ahead of the visit. So through MyChart, through a number of questionnaires, things that they can do ahead of time, they can actually do what's called an e-check-in. So they can go through their past medical history, allergies, they can say what their concerns are automatically ahead of time by themselves. So when they come in for their actual visit, they then can have a conversation where the provider provider says, oh, I see you said this, this, and this, and can consume it into the record instead of them having to key it all in. So there's ways that we can leverage our patient base that is really more on the automated side, that they can do that work ahead of time and come in and have a much more fluid visit, more interactive visit with the providers, and less time that the providers are spent trying to key that information in when the patient
So
can
when
do it ahead
done
of
well
time.
and efficiently, this could actually leave more room for interaction.
Absolutely.
Pauline wrote in and had this question about her mom. My mom is a patient at GBMC and does not have access to a computer. My mother is the same, by the way, as much as I try, and is not interested in learning how. I'm right there with you, Pauline. It's very frustrating. Will her care be affected if she can't log on to her chart? And if so, can I access her account on her behalf?
Right, great question. So certainly their care will not be affected. It'll be the standard sort of care that you would interact on a visit or a phone call with her physician, so she can continue to do what we always have done years in the past. There is a great, and I think this is a great benefit of MyChart, is you can have what's called proxy access. So the mother, an elderly parent, can give access to a child or a spouse where that's appropriate. And so they, even if they live out of town, can have access to MyChart, find out what's going on, what are the medications, what did the doctor's office visits say, and not just hear it from your elderly parent. And so you can have that interaction from afar or from close by and speak with the physician by just getting that proxy access.
You make it sound easy, but with all the HIPAA laws and everything, I mean, it's like you almost have to get
Well, so you have to have
all these things signed from every single doctor, right?
So in terms of MyChart, you just have to give proxy access to one time. So in Pauline's case, her mother has to come in and just sign. She doesn't have to do it electronically, so it can be done at the office visit and have that done so that her physicians know that I can talk to Pauline about questions, and Pauline can get refills, can order refills for her mother.
That's very helpful.
It's a great benefit.
And on the flip side, for the non-geriatric population, you have the pediatric population. So if you have children where you're the infamous school forms and all the vaccinations and everything that you have to provide, the parent actually has proxy over their child's MyChart account, so they can actually get those forms and information that they need and help to get that information.
You know,
out
sometimes you have to pay to get those forms before school or sports. Can we now just get on MyChart if we have our child entered and just print it out when?
Absolutely.
Get the vaccination record, just print it right out.
And then also, speaking of payments, you have the ability to pay your bill right online with MyChart. It can remember your credit card information. You can say which bill you want it to post against, so you have that feature as well.
Okay, we have another comment from Facebook right now, so thank you for listening and watching live. June commented, summary notes about our doctor's visits are okay, but we really need to see physicians' clinical notes on our electronic record.
So right, June is absolutely right.
June, you're on the money.
Right on the money. So, you know, that's been one of the things that physicians push back about. They were a little bit concerned about revealing things. Not so much that they're afraid the patients to know much about it, but sometimes patients will not understand and overreact to words or lab tests and get concerned. But we still think that that's the better way to go. Transparency is the better way to go. We want, as I said earlier, the patient be a partner in their health care. So we are in the process. I think this month we are going to be releasing the initial history and physical that the physician, the provider does, as well as progress notes, follow-up notes that are considered not sensitive, but regular progress notes, consultations that are obtained from other physicians, part of GBMC, other physical therapy notes. All that will then become available so that the functionality of MyChart expands beyond just labs and x-ray, so you can actually see and check on what I remember what the physician said. It'll be written right there for you.
So actually this is asking for the physician to be probably more transparent than they ever have been in their careers.
Yes, I suspect from a physician point of view, yes, that's for
Because you have to think a lot. You could write shorthand. You have your own notations for people or anything, and it might not be taken the same way by the particular person reading it as you meant it. So now you have to think about what you write.
Right. So
Can you give me an example of what a clinical note might be, just off the cuff, just sort of?
So a clinical note and a follow-up might be about the patient's cigarette smoking, their weight, their alcohol use.
Still haven't quit, or
still haven't
something
quit,
like that.
right. And, you know, still giving me excuses about why they haven't quit, or still gaining weight as opposed to losing weight, or not taking medications as prescribed, not compliant, or something like that. And so somebody might say, oh, I don't like that way that, you know. So we have to, but on the other hand, that's a good conversation to have. And so, again, the patient can read it, write into MyChart, say, why did you say it this way, or what did you mean by this? this, and we would then interact and give them. And again, I think it's just a matter of having a good dynamic relationship with your provider and be honest, so the physician and provider is honest with the patient about this is what I'm concerned about, this is in my differential diagnosis that maybe this is cancer, I don't think so, but maybe it is, and people might react to that. So we want that dialogue to go on,
So
even though it's
clinicians
electronic.
now really have to think about what they write.
They definitely
Absolutely.
have to think about it. And
Lots
they should have
of-
always.
And lots of education, lots of communication behind it as well.
Even when the record was paper, it's the patient's record. So this just made it electronically easier, but it was always the patient's record, and they always had access to that record if they requested it. Now they
But
have
how
open
many
access.
did?
Right, very
I mean,
few.
Yeah, very few. I don't think I've ever seen mine.
Right.
So, okay, Alex wrote, a year after this new system, we touched on this briefly, after this new system is in place, how do you think the patients and providers like it?
I think now we're moving into the time frame, finally, that they really are starting to love it. There's a lot of features, things that are hard to grasp right off the bat when you go live with a system like we did, and we really did everything big bang all at once. So now we're coming to the point that they understand how to do their basic job, their basic work, and now we're getting the questions of, well, I want to do this, I want more, how do I do this? So that's where we're really ramping
you're
up
like,
from
"Whoa, okay."
I know, it's like, man, I don't get to break it all.
We come to Cindy and say, what have you done for me lately? I don't care about
Exactly.
it.
That's
But
always
some of
the
our
way.
most complex areas were the easiest to adapt. So the ER, cancer treatment, the operating room, they actually were the easiest to adapt where patients and physicians really found them very beneficial. In the primary care offices, we're having a little bit more of the issues of getting the right kind of information and making it easier to go onto the chart. So we're working through that, but that's getting better. We think we're at a tipping point where everybody's happy. So.
All right. And the beauty of this Facebook Live conversation is that you can just fire off a question and we will answer your specific question. Like with Robert, who writes, is there someone I can talk to directly about my MyChart account? I can't get it to work.
Yes. So
Helpline.
yes, we actually are encouraging you to call your provider's office. So they are going to give you any information that you need to make sure that what you're seeing in your MyChart account is indeed accurate. They can help you get into it. But because of the demands and how much information we're now starting to push to MyChart, we're setting up a 365, 7-day a week, 24-hour a day call center that they will be able to do the general issues that you may have, password, you need to get your username, login, some of the basic stuff to that way you don't have to wait to get through and get it set
Help
up.
is there. I want to hit all these questions before we run out of time. Maria wrote, how permanent is my electronic medical record? Will it be kept for centuries after I'm gone?
Oh, yeah.
And does my record have the ability to communicate with other hospital and professional office records should I relocate? Also, she has a lot of questions, and I don't blame her. If the power goes out or the computer is down, should I worry that my information will be lost?
No, you shouldn't worry that the information will be lost. It's backed up and it's
Okay.
protected in that way. It'll last for, we don't know how long, but forever. But it'll be in the electronic world, as we'll see what happens. And I think there was a third question
Yeah,
there.
can I communicate with other hospitals and professional offices? Should I relocate?
So easy, again, we try and build interfaces between one electronic medical record system and another so that we, even locally, if you're just seeing multiple, as the other person asked about, but if you're moving to some other place, Epic, again, is probably the biggest carrier across the country, and it's very easy then to transfer from one Epic to another. They have a Epic Care link, but it can be with other systems as well. But it's a little bit complicated.
Can you
but
print it out too? Just take it with you if that makes you more comfortable. Allie asked, the change to my MyChart has been great since now my team at Hopkins has access to my GBMC records, that my team can see what's going on with me. It helps so everyone on my team is on the same page with my medical care. We're so glad to hear that,
Exactly,
Allie.
that's a great benefit.
And Betty also writes, and by the way, I want to mention too, for everyone who's written in on Facebook and who continues to do so, you will be entered in a drawing because the famous GBMC Speakers Series starts in October and you can win some free tickets. So it's just a little bonus there if you've participated. But another question, these computerized records are great. This might be just a comment from Betty, but they have to be able to share their records with all doctors. Again, the big concern there, really.
And that's the, it might have been easier if everybody was on the same record from the get-go, but
you can't control
we can't control
everyone,
independent
right.
practices, and some docs are still on paper and they like it that way. Some docs have other systems that are a little bit easier and cheaper for them to use, but we try and communicate back and forth and create interfaces and systems that will talk to each other, but it's a work in progress for the different offices.
And I will say that's one of the main reasons why GBMC made this their strategic vision, because we had 3 disparate systems. It was really hard. You would have a patient in the primary care setting, go to the hospital, and then if they progress to a post-acute setting, it was really challenging. You got asked the same question 16 times through. So with us bringing up one system, it did away with that, and at least from GBMC, we can have streamlined communication all through the levels of care.
So to put in a little plug for GBMC
Please.
docs, right? So if you just use GBMC employed physicians, your record is all there. Everybody communicates one to the other, and that's a reason to use us.
All right, on that note, Dr. Tucker, Cindy, thank you so much. A great topic,
All right,
and I'm sure
thank you
there'll be
very
many
much.
more questions, but you got a lot of information out there on our show on Facebook Live. Where are we again? Facebook Live. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next time. We hope you'll be with us.
Thanks.
It did go faster.